Congratulations on this album. It's an absolutely fantastic album, so congratulations.
Hey, thank you very much. So far, the feedback can't be any better, and it turns out there are not too many bands out there playing this kind of music. So it seems there's some, I wouldn't call it market, but there's definitely some demand for a rather melodic approach of black and death metal these days. So the feedback is fantastic, and the album turns out to be quite successful so far.
You've kind of created that sound that is so unique for the band now. How aware have you been of that sound kind of evolving over the years?
I would not call it evolving, since we are cavemen when it comes to music, and we play exactly the same music right now as when we started in 2003. So at the time, we simply wanted to create some music in the vein of all the bands we grew up with in the mid-90s, like Winterland, Dawn, Dissection, Unanimated, because there were no bands at all anymore. And most of the bands that have been active in the mid-90s or late 90s somehow split up, or, well, are not active anymore at all. Some, shoot their heads, like Dissection did. Some also came back, but that's quite rare, like Mark Gröning or Unanimated. I hear they're already putting out some new music, but bottom line, this entire scene is not really present at all. And at the same time, there are many fans that are still listening to this kind of music. So we are here, we are marching on. We have our fourth record to be released, I think, next week or this week. No, this week.
Yeah.
So, if you listen to this kind of music, you somehow get located to our place.
When you say that there aren't many bands out there playing the style of music that you play now, do you see that as a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a quite good question. I don't know, to be honest. There are a few bands coming up and rising, at least from Germany. I hear Spirit and also Rome. But otherwise, I'm not sure if the Swedish scene is active at all anymore. So what I can tell you is that the demand for this music is definitely high, since all the vinyl editions we just re-released from the entire back catalog have been sold out within 3 days in the pre-orders, and the new album is selling incredibly well. So I think there's definitely something that is coming back for this kind of music. So since we are one of the few bands playing this kind of music, we are definitely in a very comfortable situation, to be honest.
Definitely. And you're a very, very busy man with other bands as well. What made you realize that this was the right time for another album right now with everything that's been going on in the world?
Well, regarding Thulcandra, it was not planned this way. We should have released the album probably 2 years earlier, but as you mentioned, I'm quite busy. I make a living out of a band called Thulcandra, and this band is touring worldwide regularly, and Thulcandra is rather the opposite. We are very, very picky regarding concerts. We are, except me, everybody has regular. Those romantic bands that are still meeting in the rehearsal room every now and then. So it's an entirely different approach. So the time was simply right, because we finally made this album happen. So we had a couple of lineup changes. We unfortunately lost our bassist in an accident last year. So many people, many things simply came together, and that delayed the album in the long term. But it doesn't feel like there are 5-6 years in between Ascension loss from 2015 and right now, a dying wish. So for us, we've been always active. We always had something to do. We played shows, single shows. We even played 3 little tours, and as I mentioned, we've been active all the time. At the moment, we simply face the situation that everybody of us has more time than expected, since most of us are still sitting at home regarding the pandemic. So we simply had the time for it.
How is it looking there now with the pandemic? We, as I just mentioned, we've opened back up here now, but there's still that threat we might go into another lockdown. How is it looking for you there, and are you able to get out now and play at shows?
Well, you can perform national shows, which is not a big issue. I mean, we live in a rather big country with many options to play concerts. Therefore, we also booked a national tour for Thulcandra. If you're trying to play tours within Europe, you have a big issue because each country has different rules regarding traveling, regarding whatever kind of permissions you need, whatever kind you are able to travel together in big or small groups. And therefore, most of the European tours are simply going to be cancelled. On the other hand, if you are able to play national shows with a couple of hundred people, it's better than nothing. And we already performed on 3 festivals in Germany with around 600 to 700 people attending. So that felt kind of normal. So in the end, I'm a quite optimistic person. I think everything should open up in the next months. I'm not sure if we're going into another lockdown. Everybody says it will not happen at all, but well, people talk a lot, so let's see how it happens.
Definitely, yeah. That's what's been happening here as well. They say that we're not going to, but yeah, you just never know. Bringing it back to the music, tell us a little bit about what was inspiring you when you sat down to work on these lyrics and on this album. Was there a theme or something that you really wanted to explore with this album?
Well, the entire album is not meant to be a concept album. Of course, we have the headline, the album title, I Wish, and that's definitely related to the passing of our bassist. But other than that, there's no red path to follow or anything. They are definitely loose and collected ideas in stuff on this album. But musically, we simply shifted a little bit from the previous record, since on the previous record we had a very clear and distinct way to work. I wrote the music, and our back then guitarist took care of the entire lyric department. And now we are simply working differently. We put all the ideas together. We shared sketches of entire songs, riffs, ideas, and it's more like a collective effort. And in my opinion, you hear the different influences a little bit more. Especially the other guitarist, Mariano De Lastic, he brought many different ideas and influences you would have probably not used in the past, like rather doom parts, rather really harsh Norwegian black metal parts that are a little bit less melodic but more brutal, so to say. So the entire diversity got shifted toward a better place, in my opinion.
You mentioned losing one of your bandmates, and it was in such a tragic way. How do you, as a band, recover from that? That must be something that it's like losing a family member. So how, as a band, have you been able to recover from that and move on a little bit with the new album?
Well, the entire motivation was down to zero, to be honest. So we have been in the middle of writing the album when Christian passed away. We already had photo shooting done, and we're actually looking forward to enter the studio in summer. So he passed away. I think we didn't do anything for weeks, and at a certain time, this entire attitude switched 180 degrees to, okay, let's finally finish what we just started. And we did not replace Christian. We, somehow found solutions to work around this. I recorded the bass myself, and all the ideas he pre-produced. So we always sharing a couple of sketches of songs here and there, but they are not written on sheet music. They are just recorded as demos. So I was sitting down and listening to all ideas, and what was not arranged already, I simply had to write down on sheet music, analyze it, and arrange songs from those ideas the same way as we would have worked if he would be still here. So we simply finished more or less together, although he's not there anymore. And from the pre-production, we took two interludes that are also on the album, Orchid of Prevents and what's it called? In Bleeding Misery. Two tiny little interludes where you only hear an acoustic guitar that are actually played by him, and we took it from the pre-production, and that Dance Warner, the producer, used some studio magic to bring it up when it comes to quality. So we have him, at least in some parts, performing on the album, and then we finished it without a new bassist in the end. And this was, to be honest, a quite rewarding and in some way uplifting feeling when we just finished it and had the final vinyl in our hands with him on the album. So, but for the future, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. At the moment, we are working with a bassist who simply works as a substitute, although he's a quite good friend. I'm not sure if we are going to replace him, but we are definitely going on with the band and simply keep his work in honor.
Definitely. And you mentioned working with Dan there as well as a producer. Tell us a little bit about Dan, because we know that he is an absolute legend. What's he like to work with, and what do you feel that he brings to your music?
Well, before we hired Dance Warner, we thought about where we are going with the band sound. So, and for me, it was simply clear that I do not want to have a polished sound. I'm not looking for a production that is entirely polished or sterile in some way. So we recorded drums in a studio in Munich, 5 Lake Studios, and everything else in my studio over here. Unfortunately, I don't have a drum cabin yet, but everything else is possible to do here. So Dance Warner was hired to take care of mixing and mastering the album. And of course, we talked a lot before. And he also asked a lot of questions, what we are looking for. And this was really, really cool, because usually some producers simply make a copy and paste of their own sound and their own preferences, but Dan was entirely the opposite. He really asked the band where they want to go, what kind of sound they would like to have. And we simply told them, well, produce Storm of the Lights Bane a second time. And that's exactly what he did. So it was really enjoyable working with him. He's, well, as you mentioned, he's one of the guys who probably formed this entire scene more than anyone else. He worked with Blood Bath, Opeth, Catatonia, and 1,000 other bands. And most important, he also produced many bands that have been released on Affection Records or Anthem Records in the early 90s, mid-90s. Dissection, Uninhibited, and all of those bands. So he knows exactly what this band needs. And to finish the answer, I'm super happy how this production turned out. It's really raw and pure, and you hear a real band performing. And this is really, really cool.
Definitely. It is an absolutely amazing album. And I know we are running out of time very, very quickly. So before I go, I would love to ask, what next for the band? And also, what would you like to say to your Australian fans out there before they sit down and take a listen to this album on October 29th?
Well, we're going to perform live for probably 20 shows in support of the new album. And, well, since you're going back to a lockdown, you have a lot of time to listen to A Dying Wish. And hopefully we can perform with Thulcandra in Australia as well. I've been in Australia with Obscura 2 years ago for 3 shows. There's one show in New Zealand, and it was simply fantastic. It would be fantastic to come back with Thulcandra as well.
Awesome.